Welcome to Mathematics with Larry. Today we will be looking at the question on solid figures. The question goes thus. The figure above shows a closed water tank in the form of a cuboid made from metal sheets of negligible thickness. The internal and external surfaces are to be given two coats of paint using two different types of paint A and B. A. Show that the total internal and external surface area to be painted is 124 meters squared. Given that the painter charges 500 francs for every 2 meters square painted for either type of paint, B. How much will be paid as labor cost to the painter? Given that each coat of paint is 5 mm thick, calculate in meters cube the volume of each type of paint used. Given also that the cost of paint per meter cube is 200,000 francs for paint A and 250,000 francs for paint B, calculate the cost of paint used. E. Calculate the total amount of money spent in painting the tank. Now, if you look over here, you actually find the figure. This is a solid figure. This is the cuboid, which we have there. Now, let's dive straight into this question and start tackling it part by part. Now, when we look at the very first part of this question, it says we should show that the total internal and external surface area to be painted is 124 square meters. Now, when we look at this cuboid actually is made up of 6 sides. It's a 6-sided figure, and that is why we call it a solid figure. It's a 6-sided figure, and when you look at the sides, it's such that we have side A, B, C, D, which is equal to side E, F, G, and H. They are equal sides and they are opposite. That is, you should imagine a cuboid like a cartoon. Then, if you look at the side B, C, F, G, it is equal to A, D, E, H. And then the top is equal to the bottom. That is, side A, B, G, and H is equals to side C, D, E, and F. So in effect, we have 3 different types of sides whereby they are repeated. So if we want to look at this or calculate the surface area internally and externally, we will take it part by part. So we will start with the surface area A, B, C, D. Now, if we look at the surface area A, B, C, D, we will get its area as 5 times 3, which is 15 meters squared. Now, if we look at the side B, C, F, G, we will get it as what? The surface area will be BC times BG, which is 2 times 3, and that gives us 6 square meters. Now, if we look at the bottom or the top of that cuboid, we will get its surface area as a surface area of ABGH, which is the bottom, as 10 meters squared. Now, given that each of these sides has a repetition, that is ABCD is equal to side EFGH, then it means we will multiply this area which we got here by 2. Then for this other side, that is BCFG, which is equal to ADEH, we will also multiply 6 square meters by 2. And for the bottom, since it's equals to the top, we'll also multiply it by 2, such that the total surface area will be equals to 2 into 15 plus 6 plus 10, which gives us 62 square meters. But since they say the painter showed that the total internal and external, since they want internal and external, it means we will multiply it by 2. That's the internal, because this is for one of the surfaces, either the external surfaces or the internal surfaces. And so if we multiply that by 2, we actually get what? 124 square meters as required by the question. Now, the reason for which we are considering the internal and the external surfaces to be equal is because they said the thickness of this, or the sheets, are of negligible thickness. Negligible, it means we can ignore them. And I think this actually helps us, and we have actually seen how to get what? The total surface area. That's internal and external total surface areas. Now let's look at the second part of the question. Now with the second part of the question, it says, given that the painter charges 500 francs for every 2 meters square painted for either type of paint, how much will be paid as labor cost to the painter? Now, if you look here, you actually see that the painter charges what? For every 2 meters square he paints, he charges 500 francs, which means for 1 square meter, the cost is actually what? 250 francs. That is what the painter is charging for painting 1 square meter. But now, when we look at it, you realize that the labor cost would actually be what? 250 francs times the total surface area. That is the interior and the exterior. That's the internal and the external surface areas, that will give us the total surface area times 2. Now, why are we multiplying it by 2? This 2 here, we are multiplying by 2 because in the question it says the internal and external surfaces are to be given 2 coats of paint. Are to be given what? 2 coats of paint. So that is why we are multiplying here by 2, because the painter has to paint that's the internal and the external surfaces twice. So, and if we do that, we bump in the numbers, we will see that the labor, or the amount of money to be paid to the painter, is 62,000 francs, which means the total amount of money spent as labor cost to the painter is 62,000 francs. Now, looking at the third part of this question, it says, given that each coat of paint is 5 millimeters thick, C, calculate in cubic meters the volume of each type of paint used. The volume of each type of paint used. Now, let's go back and review some basic things about the metric table. Now, for some of us who actually went through primary school, if you can recall, you realize that we used to sing this very basic song in primary school. 10 millimeters is equal to 1 centimeter. 10 centimeter is equals to 1 decimeter. And 10 decimeter is equals to 1 meter. So now, if you want to move from millimeters to meters, you see that you have 10 millimeters times 10 centimeters times 10 decimeters, which implies that we have 1000 millimeters is equals to 1 meter. Now, if 1000 millimeters is equals to 1 meter, therefore, if we use simple proportion, which I will encourage you to pause this video and then you try to convert 5 millimeters into meters. Now, what that is using simple proportion. Now, if you use simple proportion, you realize that 1 millimeter is equals to 1 meter divided by 1000 millimeters. Does that make sense? Such that 5 millimeters now will be equals to 1 meter divided by 1000 millimeters times 5 millimeters, such that 5 millimeters will be equal to 0.005 meters. Now, with that, you also recall that volume is equal to length times width times height. Now, in this case, let's consider just one surface area. Let's consider just, I beg your pardon, let's consider just one surface of the cuboid. Now, this is our cuboid, which we were given from the outset. Now, if you look at, let's consider the side ABCD. Now, the side ABCD, we will paint the exterior and the interior part. Now, let's look at just the external part, that's the exterior part or the exterior surface. Now, we will see that the volume for this exterior surface is actually given by what? It will be this length AB times this height AD. Now, that is the surface area. But now the volume, how do we get now the height of the paint? We are told that the paint has a thickness of 5 millimeters, which is equivalent to 0.005 meters. Therefore, the volume of paint on one face of ABCD, that could be the exterior face, let me consider that, will be 5 times 3 times 0.005, which is equals to 0.075 cubic meters. Now, if we look at the volume or the surface area BCFG, we will also see that the volume of paint on that face is 0.03 cubic meters. Now, for the bottom, if we look at the bottom of this cuboid, the volume of paint on the bottom of this cuboid will be given by 0.05 meters cube. That is length times width times the height of the paint, because the length is given by what? AB, the width is given by BG, and then the height of paint on that bottom is given by 0.005 meters, and that gives us 0.05 meters cube. Now, looking at this cuboid, you realize that we have, just for the side A, B, C, D, we have the interior surface and the exterior surface. Now, if we look at the side G, F, E, H, it has an interior and an exterior surface as well, which means there are 4 surfaces, or there are 4 faces for the sides A, B, C, D, and E, F, G, H. Looking at the top and the bottom, we realize that there are also 4 faces, and for the sides we also have 4 faces, such that the volume of paint will be the sum of the individual volumes obtained for the different faces times 4. So we will sum the volume of paint on each of the faces and multiply by 4, since each of the sides has, or surfaces has, 4 faces. And so the total volume of paint, each type of paint used, is 0.62 cubic meters. That is the total volume of paint used for type A as well as for type B, since the thickness of paint is the same for the 2 types of paint. Now let's continue to the next part. Given also that the cost of paint per cubic meter is 200,000 francs for paint A and 250,000 francs for paint B, calculate the cost of paint used. Now this one is very simple and very straightforward. Now if you look at it from part C, we saw that the volume of paint used is 0.62 cubic meters. So if we want to calculate the cost of paint for type A used, it will simply be the volume of paint used times the cost of buying a cubic meter of that paint. And so in this case, we will just have 0.62 times 200,000 francs, which will give us 124,000 francs as cost for type A paint. Now, if we go straight to type B paint, it will be the same procedure, and we get 155,000 francs as the cost of buying type B paint. Therefore, the total cost of paint will just be the sum of the two, which will give us a total of 279,000 francs for as cost of paint. Now, the last part of the question asks us to calculate the total amount of money spent in painting the tank. Now, if you look at this tank, we have principally two types of cost or two types of expenditures that were incurred in painting this tank. We have the labor cost and the cost of paint. Now, from our different parts, we saw that labor cost, which was from part B, it gave us 62,000 francs, and from part D, cost of paint, we had 279,000 francs. So if we add the two, we realize that the total amount of money or the total expenditure to paint this tank was 341,000 francs. Thank you for watching this video. Please like, share, comment on our videos so that anytime we post a new video, you will be able to see it. Thank you. Bye bye.